is conscious experience necessary for attentional selection, amplification, and suppression? So in short, it's not necessary. And this is the evidence for attention without consciousness. It's starting from highly pioneering work by Kentridge that I described in the first video for this week. There was lots of studies going on, and then I talked about Ross Courage study here, and then Bahadur Bahrami's study here, right? But also there were I also touched on other study in the past week. Monteza-Kozari's paper and also Kaunit's paper mentioned that our adaptation to the invisible stimulus also requires attentional amplification. So if you are distracted during this during this unconscious adaptation effects, then it's weird, but the unconscious adaptation effect itself gets weaker or becomes absent. So many in these, based on these kind of all these experiments, it seems it's quite established that both psychophysically and also neuronally, attention can operate without consciousness, and that's been reviewed by Stan Dehane and also us, and also other group as well. And this implication is quite important when you talk about unconscious processing and so on. Many of the unconscious processing reported so far was revisited like this way, and then sometimes replication was difficult because attention was not controlled for the invisible stimulus. Many people assume that oh, okay, if you show some stimulus in under the subliminal condition, it doesn't matter whether you instruct this or not, but it matters. If you are trying to attend to invisible stimulus, that changes interaction between that invisible stimulus and your brain processing, and that result in different kind of things. Okay, so it's a important issue, a methodological issue and also empirical issue. Now, attention without consciousness, inspired by the blind side findings initially, but now mostly established. So does it make sense conceptually? Most neuroscientists and also psychologists seem to be more or less satisfied, but some of the philosophers are having issue, and also it may also require some kind of rethinking of the definition of attention and the consciousness. If you are thinking consciousness as attention or attention as something that you can control only through consciousness. And what does it mean to attend to something that is not consciously experienced? That challenges conceptually. But let's revisit models of the relationship between attention and consciousness, and that makes it clear probably about these conceptual issues. So here's the two of the models that Victor Lame proposed and which we talked about last week. So the left side is that when the stimulus comes into the eyes and brains, then there are three different kind of categories. One is attended and then eventually reported, unattended, and then unconscious. And the another one is that after the stimulus comes into the brain, some of them becomes conscious, some of them become unconscious, and within the conscious ones, some of them you can attend, some of them you are not attending. And then attended ones are the ones that you are consciously reported. But both of them doesn't make sense, given this fact that attention can select something that you do not consciously become aware. You do not become consciously aware, right? So here and attention, here and attention does not exist in either of them. So this is likely to be really wrong. And then revised version of the previous one can be something like this. After processing comes, and then after the stimulus input comes, then some of them are attended, some of them are unattended. And then within attended, some of them are conscious and some of them are unconscious, and then are consciously reported. Part is here. That's one possibility. Okay, and then this says that it is the necessity. Attention is necessary for consciousness. Consciousness is always a subset of the attention, right? And that's more or less consistent with this type of the model, which is that focus of attention is there, and then that's identical to consciousness. And then outside of this attention, it's unattended, and therefore unconscious. But there are this weird area within this, model here. This could be the kind of the correlates of the attended but unconscious. It's unclear about this, type of the model. Okay. Then another one that we mentioned also is this consciousness and attention to be more or less orthogonally interacting. So in here, consciousness is operating above and below this kind of vertical line, and then focus of attention can shift it, more or less freely for conscious part and unconscious part. And what we are talking today mainly concurs with this idea of here unconscious part of the brain processing and the behaviors that are still affected by focus of attention. And then we come back to this Standard-Haynes global neural network space theory. And indeed, if you look at this, when the top-down attention here is present, this model still says that there can be conscious and unconscious kind of situation. And that depends on whether the stimulus is weak or interrupted or sufficiently strong. So in the case of the blind side situation, what they say is that okay, blind side interrupts V1 process dependent processing. That's never become sufficiently strong. So it always remains in the back of the cortex through superior colliculus, pulvinar, and MT, and so on. And that's the reason why we do not see it. But it gets depending on the attention from the prefrontal cortex and the parietal cortex, whether it's amplified or not, can be explained in this model. And also similar thing for the CFS space eye movement as well, right? Even in the normal subject. And then the Bahadur-Bahram's fMRI study is also explained in this way. And B1 is in fact around here. So with or without attention, it makes a difference in terms of activity level. This is the activity level of V1 without attention, and then this is the activity level of V1 with attention. But both of them, unless it propagates to this frontal and parietal cortex, like here, they say that it's not going to be consciously experienced. Okay, so. In summary, attentional amplification can occur independent of consciousness. And then the question is that does the amplification of neural activity explain what we consciously experience, or does it correlate with what we can report about? That's another question. And next, we are going to ask neural mechanism for attention and consciousness are unlikely to be overlapping or not, but at least this dissociation, the attention without consciousness strongly suggests that those two things are one and the same thing. And then this also raises the questions. One is that even if attentional amplification is not sufficient for consciousness, isn't it still necessary? So that's basically the consistent kind of framework for the many of the models, including a global neural network space theory, right? Unless you attend, you cannot become conscious of something. But then, is there any evidence to suggest attentional amplification is unnecessary for some types of a conscious experience? And we are going to look at evidence coming from the dual task paradigm next.